9 minutes after 11 o'clock. We have just a few short minutes to talk about LBJ, Lyndon Baines Johnson, President Lyndon Baines Johnson. I just turned 60, and I remember when he was president. The older I get, the more I feel like I'm older. Does that make sense? The older I get, the more I feel like I'm older? That doesn't make any sense at all. But anyway, I can remember, because I was just a kid, really, but I can remember the hippies were like, every song they had was anti-LBJ, right? And then if you watch the TV with your dad, you know LBJ is a good guy, and so you go to school and everybody's hating LBJ because he was sending everybody to Vietnam, and then you watch the TV. So it was a confusing time if you were like 14 or whatever I was at the time. Joseph A. Califano Jr. is on the phone. He served as President Johnson's top advisor for domestic affairs and foreign affairs, I think, as well. From 1965 through 69, he served as the U.S. Secretary of Health, Education, and Welfare, and he's written a book. It's called The Triumph and Tragedy of Lyndon Johnson, the White House Years. Wow, I can't wait to see the book. Good morning, Joseph. Thank you so much for being on the show with us. This is an honor.
Well, come on. I'm happy to be with you.
Do you look back on those years with fondness?
Oh, yes, absolutely. I think they were incredibly productive. I think LBJ, as I said, we're living in LBJ's America today. I mean, when you look at his education bills and what he did for higher education, 60% of the kids in college are using his grant or loan or work-study programs. Medicare, we got 60 million Americans on Medicare, 70 million on Medicaid. Civil rights, all those civil rights laws, 64, 65, and then fair housing in 68, and the reforms in the whole criminal justice system, yes.
So there's an irony right there in that the college students of today benefit from his presidency, and the college students of his presidency were, like I said, they were pretty much all opposed to him. I guess you tell me if I'm wrong, but that's what it appeared to be as a young teenager.
Well, I mean, I think they were opposed to the war, and you have to remember there were two very controversial things. One was civil rights, and actually the worst mail we got was on fair housing.
Oh, really?
And while on television people were seeing the war, and that was, the war was the book is The Triumph and Tragedy of Lyndon Johnson. The war was the tragedy. The Great Society is the triumph.
Oh, wow, okay.
I think also you have to remember in 67, he proposed, and it was controversial, but he got it through Congress, the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. Today we have now, 400 public television stations and 900 public radio stations. We are living in his America.
Yeah.
He always did seem to get the job done, though. Some people didn't like the way he got things done, but he always got it done, and he always seemed to go through the proper channels to do it. Well,
he was the president, as I say in the book, he's the president who made Washington work. And you may not like how he made it work or what he made it work on, but he made it work, and they delivered. And there were other things. I mean, just immigration reform, which I hadn't mentioned. I mean, when he became president in 65, 85% of the immigrants to the United States came from Northern Europe and the British Isles. He ended that national quota system law, opened our country to the world, and today, 85% of the people come from immigrants into our country, come from Asia, South America and Central America, the Middle East, Africa, and Southern Europe and the Eastern European countries, because part of the reason for immigration reform was to open it up to the Soviet Jews and the Italians and the Spanish. So he's changed the country. All you do is look at pictures of large crowds and you see what a different country this is.
Did you become a friend of the family?
I knew the family well. I spent more time with President Johnson than, I ate more meals with him with my own family.
Really?
This was a consuming period of time.
And do you
started at 7 in the morning and ended at midnight.
My goodness. Do you still keep in touch with any of them?
Yes, absolutely. In the book, two things in the book that are unusual. One is there's a letter from Lucy Johnson, which she granted me what she said when she first read the book about how it described her father and how real it made him to her.
Oh, wow.
Died, and then there's, in terms of those years and today, when he got on the plane after the assassination to fly back to Washington, he called Rose Kennedy, and the second call was to Dwight Eisenhower. And he asked Eisenhower, the prior Republican president, to meet him in the White House the next day. And I came down and wrote a memo to him, and that memo had never been found or even known about. And I published the full text of it, in which Eisenhower says, here's what I think you should do. And Johnson does most of it. I mean, it's quite incredible. He always reached across the aisle.
Wow,
we could not have passed those laws without Republicans, because remember, the Southern Democrats were opposed not just to civil rights, but to the spending and the Great Society program. So he needed Republicans on everything.
Wow, it's amazing to hear you talk about it like that. I think a lot of the things we needed to know about LBJ were not really taught in school. That's what it seems like to me.
No, you're absolutely right about that, and it's one of the reasons I've written this. I mean, this is to give people a real-time sense of what he was like by someone who was with him for all those years. And I think it's important because, this sort of 10-gallon hat, big-eared Texan lent more to caricature than portraiture.
It's an interesting thing that you are publishing the book now. In my mind, I'm trying to guess why now. Why not soon, like after he died, or earlier?
Look, it was too difficult, too consuming to write. And there's a great interest in Johnson now and a reevaluation of Johnson.
Yeah, I think I think enough years have gone by, we can look at him with a little better. We're not tainted by political leanings,
That's right.
I think.
That's right.
Well, what an honor! Thank you so much for being on the air. I know you don't like that.
Thank you.
I know you don't like that, but the book is
fine.
The book is called.
Thank you.
How do we get the book?
You don't have the book?
No. Well, I mean, for our listeners, what do we tell?
For listeners, they can get it online.
Just get.
Okay.
They can go to Amazon. They can go to a bookstore. They can go to Barnes and Noble. They can get a hardcover version. They can get a paperback version. They can get an audio version. They can get it streamed.
Okay.
It's available in every kind of format.
Just go get it. It's called The Triumph and Tragedy of Lyndon Johnson. Joseph A. Califano, Jr. Thank you so much for being on the show with us today.
Well, thank you, Jeff. Good to talk to you both.
Thank you. All right, we'll take a little break and we'll be right back.
The mobile home parts and accessories anywhere. From carpet to doors, get the DIY supplies you need for less. The DIY Home Center Outlet. We are your building material closeout store. 2191 Northwest 10th Street, just 2 miles east of I-75.
The weather is brought to you by